on the agenda, or if the comments pertain to an agenda item at the time that item comes up for discussion. Individuals who wish to comment must be recognized by the president and then speak at the podium, and should begin by identifying themselves by name and address so that the village clerk can add this information to the meeting minutes. Please note that while the village code requires 2 readings of an ordinance, it also provides that the board can waive the second reading and take final action on an ordinance at any time by a vote of the concurrence of a majority of all members then holding office. So with that, I will ask our village clerk to please call the roll.
President Michael Gorman.
Here.
Trustee Sussman. Here. Trustee Self.
Here.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Also in attendance via phone, Trustee Mark Shevitz.
Okay, now.
I will get it. I will get it.
Okay.
I'll get it.
Thank you.
Just go ahead and finish the.
Okay. Absent this evening, Trustee James Reynolds and Trustee Lonnie Satchi. Also present tonight, Village Manager Peter Scalera.
Here.
Village Attorney Lance Molina.
Here.
Village Attorney Michael Mars.
Here.
And Village Clerk Kathy Haley.
Thank you, Kathy. With that, we have a quorum physically present at this meeting. Our ordinance provides that a member of the village board, if he asserts one of 3 reasons, can participate in a meeting over the phone, and one of those meetings is for employment purposes. Mr. Shevitz is on the phone and has informed us that he is away on business today. Our ordinance requires that after establishing that a quorum is physically present at a meeting where a member of a village board desires to attend electronically, the presiding officer, which is myself, shall state that a notice was received by a member of the village board in accordance with these rules. The member will be deemed authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless a motion objecting to the member's electronic attendance is made, seconded, and approved by 2/3 of the members of the village board physically present at this meeting. So do I hear any motion to not allow him to participate? Hearing none. If no such motion is made and seconded, then the member who has requested to electronically participate shall be declared to be present. Mr. Shevitz, you are with us?
I am.
Thank you, trustee. Okay, with that, we shall now, if everybody would please rise and join us for the pledge, I'll ask our village manager to lead us in the pledge today.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First up today, we have a presentation for the village by some members of our Riverside residents, the Big Chill crew, who operates the skating rink in the Big Ball Park. Gentlemen, could you step up? Introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your excitement that we actually had a little bit of cold weather this year.
That's right. Hi, I'm Kevin Peschke. David Jones.
Mark Michkowski.
And we're the leaders of the Big Chill, and we're happy to provide a rink for the community, especially the children who enjoy it.
And yeah, we just want to come today and just thanks to the village, various departments, the rec department, public works, and all the staff as far as helping us out, supporting us. Especially, we had a great, successful family skate night a couple of weekends ago. I don't know if anyone had seen it, drove by, but we probably had, I don't know, I'd say close to 150 people out there. Just having a great time. It's perfect weather, so just want to thank you guys for the support, and we enjoy doing it. I think it's great for the community.
Well, I've heard from a number of residents who, take part in the skate park and are very appreciative of the fact that you guys do that, and we work with you to the extent we do for you to do that. So now what, 2 years in a row you weren't able to put it up? Or
Just 1 year.
I know not last year, right?
We did not have the rink last year.
Okay, all right. Well, and you sort of had it this year. I mean, it wasn't open too much, so.
Right.
So let's see, maybe this coming year you'll put it up at Thanksgiving and it'll stay up to Easter.
Right.
How's that?
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. So.
Is anybody else?
How many years has the Big Chill? 10?
It's more than that, 10 to 15, I think.
Probably
I
15
put it on we have a Facebook page, and I put it on Facebook. I thought that Steve Hope was one of the original founders. Steve, oh my God, I did this myself. Bob Thompson donated the boards back in the day. Bob and Steve still help us out. It had been Tonkin, right?
Jeff Tonkin.
Jeff Tonkin was one of
Mike
the
Wolfer.
original members. So that goes back in the 2000,
Yeah, their kids are
maybe
all
2000
college.
era, 2010 period.
Well, it used to be down
Yeah.
Swan Pond,
Yeah.
and then moved up here, so, and probably want to give a shout out to like Riverside Junior Women's Club,
Yeah.
because traditionally, they have every year basically helped, if you want to call, they have really enabled us to get the liner and help sponsor that. And
Yeah, they donated the liner,
the
which is
liner.
roughly $2,100
Right.
a year.
And we need that, obviously, for days like this, when it is warm, it melts, or retains the water, and then when it freezes back up, it's right there, so.
But the cooperation from the village has been really strong the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Just wanted
that.
to
It was-
thank you. Makes it a lot easier.
And thanks to Ron and Parks and Rec too. I know he's not here, but they've been a big help as well, so thank you.
Well, it's a two-way street. Recreation is, it's active recreation is very important in our town.
Yeah.
And we would never have the capability of doing this without volunteers like y'all, so.
Yeah, I think people see a lot of hockey players out there at times, and there's hockey nets, but like the family skate night, there was like 100 small kids out there just having a great time with their parents. And so it's not just a hockey thing. And certainly if we see that rink, if any of the guys or Frank and Ron would be out there seeing too much hockey going on and there's kids, there's room for the kids to skate, that the hockey gets shrunk down to a much smaller size. So it's not just hockey, it's all the young kids having fun with their parents.
Gentlemen, thank you, and thank you to the rest of the members of the Big Chill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any member in the audience who would care to address the board this evening? Seeing no one, we shall move on to the reports of the village officers. President's report is first. I'm going to restrict my comments here. I'm on the upswing from a cold that I've been fighting since Thursday, and I'm not sure how long my voice will hang in there, but I'm doing better. I'm just going to comment on one thing. Attended my CMAP meeting last week. There's been a proposal out there for 6 or 7 months to consider the merger between the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning and the Regional Transportation Authority. Our board, I as a member of the CMAP board, we've discussed that in our board meetings a few times. Legislation was filed last week in Springfield to make that happen. It's very preliminary at this point. I think what's driving it is some of the dissatisfaction with the RTA, quite frankly. The CMAP has been an exemplary organization, and I think part of the impetus is to bring these two organizations together. They have some similarities because they both do planning, but the RTA is much more of a transportation funding agency. So it'll be an interesting discussion. Bottom line is you have to do what's best for the taxpayers, what's the most efficient way to manage our resources going forward. So that'll be an interesting discussion in the weeks and months to come. So with that, I will turn to Village Manager Scalera.
Okay, and I only have one item on the on my agenda for this evening, and that is our coyote policy that the village implemented last week. Chief Weitzel and I worked by contacting a number of communities who had similar events occur in their community, as well as reaching out to a number of communities in the Colorado area to just talk to them about how they deal with the issue and effective techniques that they've implemented that we could then utilize here in Riverside. So for those residents who may be watching, the policy is now available on our village website. I ask that you please take the time to go through it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to call the village manager's office. But I think one of the good things about the policy is that it has a checkoff list that will be helpful for the police department to identify problem areas or sightings, so that then if in the event that we need to go to that next step, we can kind of pinpoint where the origin is, and it'll help us address the issue. So that is all I have, Mr. President.
So what is it that we are asking residents to do under that policy?
The policy really recommends hazing, and that is there's a number of steps that residents can take if they come in contact with a coyote. The thing that I can probably stress the most is do not run away from them. elevate your voice, be assertive with them. If you have anything that you could throw at them, whether it be a rock or anything handy, to do that, and that they are more fearful of humans than people think, and they will then realize that they're not supposed to be where they're at, and they will run away.
And we are asking residents, when they see a coyote, to do what?
To contact our police department, and we have forms now that we will be utilizing to help the police department identify sightings throughout the village that we can then use if need be.
Get any calls yet, Tom? We'll get a first-hand report from our police chief here.
We have, Mr. President. We've received, as of today, we've received 12 reports for 2013 already. We've created a computer code. Our software company created one so the dispatchers can put it in, and it'll be very easy for us to search for data. And the new form will include not only the report itself, but a geographical location, so maybe we can, in the future, put a map up on the GSI that the village has.
Would it be any easier for your staff if we provided an email notification as opposed to, in addition to telephone call?
An email notification?
Go on a website, request a service. I mean, so you have a link, and it would email, the resident could email, location, date, time, whatever, rather than making the phone call. I think that people, you guys can decide, but I think people at times are reluctant to call the police department, whether it's, even when it's a non-emergency.
We can research that if it's not something they feel is a dangerous situation. I just want to make a notification.
Well, it's kind of up to you too. And
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a, time commitment it is to your staff.
Well,
Just
when they
a
call
thought.
now, we do send an officer. So if you're calling to report, we'll try to go and verify, because some of the reports that we're getting are the animals look sick. And as the manager said earlier, they're skittish animals. All the experts tell us that, with one exception: if the animals are injured, then they're not skittish. So that would be my only warning to residents. If the animal looks like it's injured, I would not, I would call the police immediately.
Good, that's good advice. Thank you, Tom. That's it, Peter?
That's it.
Village Attorney Lance Molina?
Won't lengthen the proceedings. I have no report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Before I read the agenda, we will remove item D from the agenda, as those minutes were approved already by this board or accepted by this board at our January 22nd meeting. So is there any other item that anyone requires removed for discussion? Seeing none, on the consent agenda for today is the approval of the bills of February 18th, 2013, approve Village Board of Trustees executive session meeting minutes of January 22nd, 2013, approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes of February 4th, file and review Landscape Advisory Commission meeting minutes of December 11, 2012, file and review Riverside Cable Commission meeting minutes of January 14, 2013. I would request a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion by trustee Sells, a second by trustee Ballerine. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sells.
Aye.
Trustee Ballerine.
Aye.
President Gorman. No. I'm sorry. Trustee Shevitz.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see,
Sorry.
Mark. It's a little hard to see, Mark, but he is right here. Peter and I have our eyes on him. So the consent agenda is adopted. Thank you. Let's move on to reports of board chairpersons. I ask trustee Sussman, and we shall move item, item E up, the zoning variance ordinance. So we have the interested parties here in the audience. So trustee Sussman?
Yes, thank you. What I'd like to do, we did, for those of you who were here last time, we had quite a lengthy discussion about this. What I'd like to do is start by reading the ordinance that's before us today, then ask if any of my fellow trustees have any questions or comments, then ask the architect, Mr. Circa, who's here, and the homeowner, Mr. Gibson, if they would like to, they would like to address us, and then see if there are any questions from the trustees for you gentlemen, okay? So I'm going to simply read the ordinance that's before us today. The applicant submitted a request for 2 zoning variations of the Village of Riverside zoning code seeking relief from the rear yard setback and lot coverage requirements for their property at 52 North Delaplane, which is on the corner of Delaplane and Herrick. Petitioners desire to construct a one-story addition at the rear of their existing one-story residence, which is on the Herrick side of the property. Right? I'm making sure. They seek variations from sections 10-4-3 of the Village of Riverside zoning ordinance, which requires that rear yard setbacks be 25% of the depth of the lot, and which also requires that maximum building coverage on corner lots in the R1A single-family residential zoning district not exceed 30% of the lot. Petitioners are seeking a 10-foot variation to the required rear yard setback for a total setback of 28.33 feet. They also seek relief from the 30% lot coverage requirement. They would like the residence and addition to have a footprint not to exceed 35% lot coverage. The proposed addition will include a dining room, there is no dining room currently, an additional bedroom and bath. There was a public hearing at the end of November, and after hearing the applicant's request at this public hearing, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted favorably 6-1 in favor of the setback variation and 5-2 in favor of allowing the variation for lot coverage. I'd like to just review the three criteria, there are a bunch of criteria, but these are the three primary criteria that are used in making the decision about granting or not granting a variation. The owner of the property in question will suffer undue hardship in the absence of such variation. The plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances, and the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. So having said that, I'd like to open it up for any additional comments from President Gorman or my fellow trustees. Mark, you weren't here last time, and so we did have a lengthy discussion. I just wondered if you had any comments.
No, I read the minutes, and I re-reviewed the Zoning Board of Appeals notes as well from that hearing.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments?
And Mark, maybe you were already familiar with this from the minutes, but one of the things that happened at the last meeting is we did have a report or an opinion, I guess, from our village attorney, and the comments and our debate really focused on the notion of what kind of interpretation we're going to give to undue hardship, and it seems that there's two general avenues to take. One is kind of a more restrictive view that says that the undue hardship has to be specific to the land itself. And a more flexible view, maybe the more modern view, is one that allows deciders like us or the Zoning Board of Appeals to take into account things like the actual structure itself or any of the natural accoutrements of the property, like mature trees, that kind of thing. What I've been thinking about since the last meeting were actually the reasons that Lance explained to us about the two differing viewpoints. And Lance, if I don't paraphrase you correctly, please correct me. But my understanding is that really the kind of the more strict view is really intended for situations where there's a public interest in trying to start to kind of turn the housing stock. Where, let's say that you have a situation like in our situation here, we have a mid-century ranch-style home. One policy decision could be, well, we want to have different kinds of homes than that, so we're going to apply this very strictly. If they were to build up on their ranch-style home, they wouldn't have a ranch-style home. The other avenue seems to be come into play where you have communities that have an interest in preserving their housing stock. And it seems to me that that's where Riverside falls. It doesn't make any sense to me in this circumstance to say that you can avoid having a variation by converting a ranch-style home into a split-level home. So that was one of the main concerns we had. And I also pointed out at the last meeting that, as you already know, Mark, that an overwhelming majority, as Trustee Sussman just said, of the Zoning Board of Appeals did recommend approval of this. And as a final aside, and this kind of got lost along the way, and I agree that it's not a dispositive issue. But when the homeowners bought this property, our village website did have an entry saying that they were allowed up to 35% usage. That was a mistake on the website's part that's been corrected. I agree that people who do business in town need to know our ordinances, but as an incremental addition to the other reasons, it seems to me it'd be pulling the rug out from under the current homeowner if we did not allow this variation.
I guess I wasn't going to say anything, but I do disagree with some of what Trustee Sells said about what happened at the last meeting and in characterizing Attorney Molina's comments. I think in the first place, I want to be very clear in saying that the 35% was an error online. There are also all sorts of caveats online that say check with the housing, with the building department. The architect here, Mr. Circo, has done lovely things in town, but he's also, I know he knows the zoning code in Riverside. So I just want to set the record straight on that. I think that's an unfair characterization of what was known and wasn't known. I also think that we can quibble about using the adjectives then, but I don't think they're quite fair in talking about that. And I would disagree that if you, when the Zoning Board of Appeals was first set up, the discussion that went on, which represented Riverside, your implication that that it doesn't represent Riverside was a very strict interpretation of it. Whether that exists today or not, I think it's not really fair to say it doesn't characterize the way Riverside views its housing stock. It may not be the way you view our housing stock or people on different commissions, but I think we don't really know without going out to the residents how residents view the maintenance of the housing stock. And I would add to that by saying that I could make the argument that we can just as easily maintain housing stock, but that the Zoning Board of Appeals and the zoning code exists in the first place to help maintain the way Riverside looks and to maintain that kind of housing stock. So I think it's all open to interpretation, and I don't want people, Mark, you weren't here, it was quite a discussion, listening from home or on this board to, I just want to make sure that we realize that there are really different points of view, and because zoning is something that changes over time and communities change over time, I think I would just like to caution that we be careful about characterizing Riverside's belief this way or Riverside's belief in a different way.
Well, as you say, Riverside's housing stock and the character of the housing stock, I think it's very important that when we see when someone comes for a zoning variance like this, that we look at what they're doing. Like this family can easily stay within the zoning ordinance by putting a second floor in that house, and we wouldn't even be discussing it. And that would be okay. But is that really what's good for Riverside? That's what we're here to discuss. I drove by that house on Blooming Bank that we voted, I think almost unanimous, well, no, not unanimous, but we voted to give a variance to. And what they did to that house is not only a compliment to that house and to the neighborhood, but to all of Riverside. That house looks like it was built that way. But our zoning would have rather had them slam a two-car garage in the back of the lot, blocking the neighbors, taking up valuable green space, affecting trees. That's what our zoning would have rather had these people do. But instead, we looked at that property and said, this is better for the property, for the neighborhood, and for the village. And I said, we have the same issue here. We have an addition that is not only going to complement Riverside's housing stock, but complement the style of the house. When this addition gets done, it'll be like that addition on Bloomingbeck, where you won't even know, I don't think you'll even know that that addition was ever done, and it updates our housing stock. Because as we move forward, people want different things than they wanted in the 50s. And whether we can argue whether they want they should have those things or not, but they want those things. And if I would rather have the residents do it in a responsible manner that appreciates the house and appreciates the architecture than in a sloppy manner that just gets them around our zoning.
And so how does that relate to the criteria and the judging determination process, Joe?
Well, I have a vote, and that's the way I'm going to vote.
Okay,
I mean, I think,
that's
you know,
your answer. I just felt like I had to say that.
hardship, the gentleman has 9,900 square feet, but he's only given credit for 7,500 square feet. He's paying tax on 99, but he's only getting credit for 75.
He's not paying taxes on that.
Yes, he
That's
is.
what
Look at his
Peter's-
tax bill.
Peter, I thought we had this discussion.
His tax bill says 9,900 square feet. He gets credit for 7,500.
He should probably appeal his tax
Well,
bill.
I'm just telling you, but that's what that property gets taxed
You're
on for
gonna
the
appeal
last
your tax
50 some odd years. So I'm just saying, that to me is a hardship.
All right, we've gone this route
Okay.
already.
Been over that. Go ahead. Trustee Sells.
I just want to be, the whole point is that there are two different interpretations.
I understand.
I understand that. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is, you know, how do we, it seems that the Zoning Board of Appeals and this body, we have to be consistent so that we can give information to homeowners who might be wanting to do things to their homes in the future so that they understand what interpretation we're going to use. And as Lance said last time, I mean, really the way that typically happens is just through the accumulation of decisions. I mean, we have one decision on Blooming Bank where we've granted a variation by taking into account this more, whatever adjective you want to use, the one that isn't strictly pertaining only to land itself, but also takes into account the structure and natural parts of the property. Because I think it's unfair for our residents, for architects, for developers to not know until they are sitting here what standard we're going to be using. My reading of the Zoning Board of Appeal transcripts suggests to me that they were adopting this more flexible, encompassing view. That's my read of the transcript. That is the view that I would advocate for this board to apply. So I understand that there are differing interpretations. That's really what we're talking about.
All right, I wasn't going to bring this up actually, but I just disagreed with Ben's interpretation of what went on. So does anybody else on the board have a question or?
Anybody from the audience? You're not required to speak. You guys spoke before.
Do you? Oh yeah, sure,
You're
please.
more than welcome to.
Or Mr. Gibson, if you'd like to speak as well, you're welcome to speak.
State my name and all that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. I'm Ken Serco.
Sure everybody knows who we are.
I am Ken Serco. I live at 404 Addison Road. I'm with Serco Architects, and I'm representing Doug and Joanne Gibson, the homeowners that we're talking about, and their property. First of all, I want to thank everyone for, once again, meeting and discussing this. I know this has been a very interesting issue in terms of interpretation of various adjectives regarding our particular zoning ordinance that's happening. I do want to make just a couple of points. We've already touched on everything in the last several meetings without redefining the wheel. One of the key things that we had to address in the Zoning Board of Appeals package, you know, there are the three main criteria. However, there's also, like you mentioned, a list of a bunch of other criteria, which we have more than successfully, I think, interpreted. You know, we're not changing the character of the property. We're not doing anything detrimental. We're not removing light and vent, and we're not impairing health and safety. You know, all these things that are basic. But the last item that appears on the list is stating that we would make possible the reasonable use of land and building. Now, I don't know what adjective I want to throw at that, but when the zoning application specifically mentions making reasonable use of land and building, I interpret that to mean exactly what it says, that it isn't just pertaining to the physical property of the deeded land itself, but it does actually include any structure that's on the particular parcel of land, including sort of the gray area in between, which I think would be natural tree growth. We're a village in the forest, I think, is, you know, in Olmsted, and we can get into that whole thing, but what we're talking about is trying to preserve green space, trying to preserve landscape, trying to make reasonable use of this land without being too detrimental to all of the other items that I just mentioned that are in the Zoning Board of Appeals. So, you know, we've talked about the hardships, and we've talked about other things. A hardship that came up, and it was just mentioned, was the fact that the Gibsons are being taxed on, and I've got that information, they're being taxed on 9,499 square feet of land, which, if you have a reference to the property, that's the whole shooting match, that's the whole thing. Their actual property is 7,241 square feet, which we've been discussing before. That's a difference of 2,259 square feet, which is a pretty substantial amount of square footage. That's a good chunk of change. If we were going to go by the tax assessment as to what we're proposing for the developed land, I'm throwing numbers at you. If we went by what the tax assessment land is listed as, that would be 26% of land that we're taking over with the addition. Based on what the actual information is, we're proposing 34%. So that's slightly above 30%, which is allowed, whereas the taxed amount is well below 30%. So in terms of just raw definition of hardship, I think the Gibsons are facing a hardship in that, first of all, they're being taxed on a whole bunch of land that's not theirs, 2,259 square feet of additional land, which is not theirs. I consider that in its own right a hardship, and again, that's open to interpretation. As you mentioned, we can't go up, it ruins the style, and we could talk about existing housing stock in Riverside. There is nothing that prevents the Gibsons from tearing down this house and buying plans online from a builder and building something, frankly, that I don't think fits in our village. We have examples of that have gone up recently, which I don't think, as an architect, properly reflect our village. Another question which recently just came up, or another issue that recently came up, is the discussion of, and this falls under hardship as well, some people, I think someone had mentioned, some people like having 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. We've discovered through the MLS and through real estate agents that, and this is interesting, the value of a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in the village is down 15% in the last 12 months. However, the value of a 3-bedroom and up, 1.5-bathroom and up house has risen 27% in the last year. That's 15% down for a 2-bedroom house, 27% up for a 3-bedroom house. That to me also makes economic sense for the village. I think this is something the village wants, and I think this is also hardship in the ownership of this home, in that they want to develop it to be competitive in this market. And the past year's MLS statistics have shown that it is not competitive in the market. So I also think that is also an addition to undue hardship. We've talked about this enough over and over. We have Zoning Board of Appeals recommendations that we proceed with these variances. We've reviewed this, we talked about it extensively, we've talked about it here extensively. I think we're all familiar with it. However, the zoning board did approve this, and I think that's why they're in place. The other thing we have is consent from the adjacent neighbors that are affected by this proposed addition. Both neighbors, and that's part of the article or the exhibits that are within the packet, have no complaints and have signed saying that they have no issues with the proposed addition. We've also, in addition, provided all of the required evidence as stated in the Zoning Board of Appeals, not only the 3 main items, but all of the other separate items as well. And I'm not going to go through those because we are all familiar with what those are. But really, I just want to argue that this is a goofy lot. It's difficult for the homeowners. It's difficult because of their taxes. It's difficult because of what they want to build and where they can and can't build. And they're trying their best through the help of a design professional to make this home aesthetically pleasing for the village and to be an asset to the community. And I just would like to ask you to consider these and our previous discussions in your vote regarding acceptance or denial of these particular variances we're requesting. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Circle. Mr. Gibson, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Doug Gibson, 52 North Delaplane. The one thing I can just mention is specifically the trees on the lot. There's a whole natural, it's on the packet, one thing is mentioned in the packet, that is that on the west side of the proposed addition, there's a whole screen of large pine trees that acts as a natural screen with a neighbor to our west it completely blocks the view of this proposed addition. Also, though, was not mentioned in front of the proposed addition, in line with the on the sidewalk there, right? Actually, there are 3 large mature pine trees to the on the west side, if you can see this, that are in place here. If we were to follow the letter of the ordinance and orient the addition the other way, we'd have to take out those trees. And those trees also act as another screen. So again, the whole idea is to create this addition with the minimal impact on the greenery, to reflect the greenery, to be as unobtrusive as possible in keeping with the spirit of Olmsted's vision.
I'm just going to say something. I'm voting in favor of granting the variations. My comments were more because I disagreed with Ben's characterization of what went on, and because I do think we should be able to talk about it in terms of the criteria. So I know that we just haven't had, I just kind of surprised you on that one, didn't I? I didn't mean to. I was going to say that. I happen to think that the taxation is almost like a red herring. If you're being taxed too much, sir, then that's not a reason for granting a variation. That's a reason for talking about your tax roll, if there's something going on with that. I mean, that's the sort of, but I'll be the first to say before we vote that I think it is a hardship. I think the sweeping vista, the need to maintain that vista is a hardship. I think number 2, uniqueness, it's not really unique in the sense that it can only be the only lot like that in the village, but there are many it's unique in the sense that there are many corner lots that are not in your same situation throughout residential areas. You already know what I think about the 35% thing, and certainly you're not doing it for economic gain. So,
excuse me, if I can interrupt real quick.
You want me to vote against it?
No, the 35% in discuss. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
The 35% still does appear on the website in
Should have
that
been
initial
taken
document.
Down, Bob.
The site, that the one that I know the 2 forms total, both of them have 35%.
Both
Okay,
still
all
list
right,
the
well, that's good.
35%, but neither here nor there, it's just for
Yeah, if
future
you want me to
reference.
vote against it because of that, I would.
We better hurry up.
But I do, so
We better get a motion in a second here before
willing to call the
people
vote
start
on
changing their
myself,
minds.
Kathy, call the vote.
Are there any other comments? If not, I think we need a motion in a second. I don't know that we've actually motioned it, have we?
I move that we accept the variation, and I second, no, I can't do that.
Second.
So motion by trustee Sussman, second by trustee Ballerine. He beat you there, Mark. He's a little closer to the action than you are. And if there's no further discussion, I would ask the village clerk to call the roll, please.
Trustee Sussman.
Let me think about it for a minute. Aye.
Trustee Sal.
Aye.
Trustee Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
And that is the required 4 votes. So with that, the ordinance is adopted. Thank you, gentlemen, for informing us through the 3 meetings and the zoning board of appeals. So thank you. Okay, Trustee Sussman, do you have anything further?
Yes, I'm going to use this opportunity to plug the art fair. RAW is on again this year. It's the weekend of the 18th and 19th of May. It'll be in Guthrie Park and on Blooming Bank. And if we've got a lot of good stuff going on, but I'll keep talking about it. If anybody would like to work on it, please contact me, or actually Kathy. They can contact you at the Village Hall as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sussman. Back to the agenda, Finance, Personnel, and Preservation, Trustee Sachi, who is absent, so if Village Manager Scalera would take his item.
This item is a resolution of the Village of Riverside authorizing the village manager to issue a purchase order to Client First Consulting Group, LLC, for information technology services in the amount of $64,975 for 2013. From From 2002 to 2011, the village utilized the services of Current Technologies Corporation for IT support. During this time, Current Technologies was the IT service provider for the West Central Municipal Conference, of which Riverside is a member. Over the last 5 years, the hourly rate for IT services has increased by 14%. In late 2011, the West Central Municipal Conference initiated a request for proposals process for IT services and selected another vendor in mid-2012. Due to the rising costs of the West Central IT vendors and increased demand by the village for information technology services, staff felt it was the best interest of the village to conduct a separate request for proposals outlining the information technology needs of the village. In 2012, the village posted notice of a request for proposal and mailed the RFP to 8 qualified firms. In January of this year, the village received 9 responses. A panel of the village manager, finance director, police chief, and lieutenant reviewed all proposals received and narrowed the firms down to 3 to interview. Proposals were evaluated based on the experience of the firm, knowledge of staff, price of support, and ability to provide IT support and equipment installation to the village and communications center. After careful consideration and evaluation, the panel of staff recommends that the village utilize the services of Client First Consulting Group, LLC. Client First has experience with government entities, dispatch centers, and is knowledgeable with the infrastructure and server requirements for Cook County and the state of Illinois. As it relates to the police department. The hourly rate will be paid to Client First is $75 per hour, plus $200 per month to remotely monitor the village servers. The hourly rate paid by the village will decrease by 24%, and the village will have the ability to have systems monitored remotely, which is an additional service not previously provided. What you have before you is a motion to approve the resolution before you, authorizing the village manager to issue a purchase order to Client First Consulting for information technology services in the amount of $64,975.
I move that we accept the ordinance.
So we have a motion,
Second.
and a motion by trustee Sussman and a second by trustee Sells. Is there discussion on this item?
I have a couple of comments. First, I'd like to thank Jessica, I think primarily, and Peter for working on this. I think this is excellent. I think we've questioned over the years whether we need a different kind of approach to IT, and this certainly is a great answer. I want to just go on the record as just talking about several of the aspects of it that I think are particularly good. One is the fact that it's an independent consulting group, that it's not an organization, a company that actually sells equipment, so it's only really operating on one side of the equation. It has a lot of public sector experience, not just in Illinois, but also throughout the country. It looks like primarily California and Illinois, but hey, what the heck? And throughout various departments, not just in a municipality, but as you alluded to, with police as well. The cost is very, very reasonable, and I think that's fabulous, and I think the fact that they have 24-hour help and they don't charge us anything more for that 24-hour help if something happens at 2 in the morning, if hope not, if there's another flood or something like that they're not going to charge us anymore. I think also that we're getting a team approach. It's not just one individual, so we're getting broad-based support, and that they're putting in metrics. We've asked for a while for the group that we worked with before to help us understand how they measure success, how they're doing in improving our systems. We were never able to do this. It looks like this company actually has a system in place for measuring how well they're performing and how well we're performing. And lastly, I like that they offer the option, if we choose to go that way, to look at our total communication project, which is, I know, is something that you and our finance director have wanted to move on for a while.
Yeah.
So I wholeheartedly support this, and thank you.
Thank you.
How does the amount of $64,000 compare to our budget for this for 2013?
We budgeted, I believe, $85,000 for IT services for fiscal year 2013.
And this is for both village and communications?
Yes.
Explain to us why it's a 4-year contract.
Partly, we felt that with the projects that we talked about during the interview, with all of the vendors. We felt that that was the time frame where we would be able to implement and then follow through on the plan that we will eventually come to develop. Also, the rates are competitive, and we feel that they will continue to be competitive in the coming years.
But, Mr. President, I'd like to follow up on that. The one question I did have was that it looks like there's a long wrap-up phase for getting some of these pieces of it rolling, like some of them are a year to just get the pieces in place. Why is it such a prolonged process?
Well, those are estimates. We don't know exactly how long it'll take. You're speaking of the transition from the current to the new?
And some of getting the metrics in place and getting some of this.
Well, we've already been working with our current provider to obtain a lot of that, so I don't anticipate us taking a year for some of that wrap up. And it's really until they come here and they evaluate the system, that's when we'll have a better determination as far as how long it'll take for implementation.
So they haven't evaluated the system yet?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Has our village attorney reviewed the contract since it's not in our packet?
No. So what I would request is that your motion or approval be contingent on village attorney approval of the contract.
That's fine.
So the motion was trustee Sussman moved?
Then a friendly amendment subject to the.
Trustee Sells, did you second that? Yeah, so we will add to the language, it's contingent upon review and approval of the contract by village attorney. With a 4-year agreement, my question to you, Lance, would be to look at termination provisions.
Right, we always
Because
do.
despite the fact that the rate is great, if the service isn't good, you better have a good way to get rid of it. Because 4 years is, in my opinion, an interestingly long contract for a service provider.
Well, there also may be issues with actually it being binding that long, but we'll work that out.
But
We'll
as long as you focus on that, I think, you are happy with the service and the rates are good. It's just so you can get out of it if they don't turn out to be who they say they are. So.
Well, I mean, I think the main, at least in my opinion, the main reason why I felt this firm was the most qualified of the firms that we interviewed or even received proposals from is that they have a person on staff who is Spillman certified, and that is the software that our dispatch center operates, or the police department utilizes the most. And to have the person on staff who's already certified will relieve a lot of pressure on our current lieutenant who has had to serve as a Spillman administrator. So allowing him to do more of the police aspect than IT aspect of his job.
Any further discussion? If not, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sells.
Aye.
Trustee Shevitz.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted. Thank you. And anything further for Trustee Sachi?
No.
Okay, moving on to next item, Public Works, Transportation, and Utilities. Trustee Sells.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one item tonight, a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract in the amount of $147,186 with April Building Services for masonry repair of the Riverside train depot. During 2010, the village received a $160,000 grant from the West Suburban Mass Transit District for masonry repair of the train depot. The project scope includes the repointing of masonry joints, replacement of window panes at the North Pavilion, and painting of wood trim. Original project bids were received on September 25th, 2012, with $233,000 being the low bid, which exceeded grant funds by $73,000. During the Village Board of Trustees October 1, 2012 regular meeting, bids were rejected and staff was directed to seek additional funding for the project and to obtain additional bids. During January of 2013, the village manager appeared before the West Suburban Mass Transit and was awarded an additional $53,000 for the train depot project. Thank you, Peter. The train depot masonry repair project was re-advertised for bid during January, with the bid opening held on February 14th. The low bid in the amount of $147,186 was received from April Building Services. The village's architectural consultant, Archon, has reviewed the bid proposal submitted by April, along with the firm's experience and qualifications, and has recommended awarding the bid to April. So I move to authorize the village manager to execute a contract in the amount of $147,186 with April Building Services for masonry repair of the Riverside Train Depot.
So we have a motion by trustee Sells. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Sussman. Is there any discussion on this item?
Before the board discusses the item, I just wanted to note two things. One, luckily, it was President Gorman's foresight to go back to the West Suburban Mass Transit District Board to seek whether or not they could provide us with any additional funding. And we were able to do that, and that gave us a total grant amount of $243,000, which now, because of the bids, is more than we need to do the project. Originally, the bids had come in significantly higher than the $160,000 grant that we had received. So I have been in contact with the West Suburban Mass Transit District because I wanted to see whether or not, provided this project comes in under budget, whether we would have the ability to take the remaining balance and utilize it for other projects at the station which need attention, primarily the platforms. And what they've told me is that at the completion of this project, I can go back to that board, ask them for a change in scope, and basically, if the money is hopefully the project stays under budget, that we would then be able to take that money and then tackle the platform, which we've estimated probably at around what the balance will be. So hopefully, keeping my fingers crossed, we'll be able to address both the tuck pointing and platform this year. So I just wanted to let you know that the money won't go to waste. We'll try to utilize every dollar.
Hopefully we won't lose any.
Yes, yes.
When do you expect this to commence, this project?
If the board approves this, Public Works, Bailey has told me that the work could begin as early as March.
Good. Thank you.
That's great.
Any further discussion? If not, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sells.
Aye.
Trustee Shevitz.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye. And thank you, and that resolution is approved to execute this contract. Next, Ben, do you have anything further?
That's all.
Next, we have Public Safety, Health, and Landscape, Trustee Reynolds, and I will again ask Peter to sub in for Trustee Reynolds.
Sure. This item is a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute a contract with Spillman Technologies for software updates for the police department computer records and dispatch system for an amount not to exceed $35,000. In 2005, the Riverside Police Department and the village signed a contract with Spillman Technologies of Salt Lake City, Utah, to provide the Riverside Police Department with the Spillman Records Management System and computer-aided dispatch systems. The police department currently utilizes software version Summit 4.5 and Spillman Mobile version 4.3. These two systems enable the police department to complete police reports more accurately and quickly, and the system has enhanced the searching functions. The CAD portion of the system is essential for generating calls for service and keeping track of both fire and police department units. The Spillman Technologies was chosen over other software vendors, and their yearly maintenance agreement includes free system upgrades. On August 26, 2006, the Riverside Police Department went live with the Spillman system and has encountered very few, if any, problems with the software or hardware provided. In 2011, the process was started to upgrade the current Spillman server and move Spillman software version Syntrex 6.1 or 6.2. Spillman recommends that their servers be replaced within 5 years at most. Our current server is 6 to 7 years old and well beyond the recommended server replacement schedule. The department has also recently been advised that Summit 4.5 is no longer being supported by Spillman, which makes the server replacement imperative. Quotes were obtained from Spillman Technologies for a server replacement at a cost of $17,014 and server and data migration for $12,710. All of the data stored on the old server will be transferred to the new server, so no data will be lost, and the police department will not need a separate standalone system with the old data.
So with that, thank you, Peter. I would ask for a motion and a second, and then we'll hear from Chief Weitzel.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Trustee Sussman and a second by Trustee Ballerini. Chief, could you comment on this resolution a little bit?
Yes, it is. It is a budgeted item, and it currently is definitely needed. Just wanted to make sure that the board, I brought to your attention that a memo was put in there. We were approached by the Village of Lyons, who also has Spillman, and asked if we'd be interested in coming to their server. They are currently having McCook and Summit Police Departments have gone to Spillman and are utilizing the server in Lyons with the anticipation that the Village of Hotchkiss may be purchasing the same equipment and going to their server. So we researched it with Spillman, and right now it's not feasible because our system was first in 2006. We have a lower version. Lyons is operating on the 6.1 already. We cannot convert. They do not have a system that convert from 4.3 to 6.1. However, when we become upgraded, if this board so approves this, in 2014, we may be able to look at going to Lyons, or 2014 or 15, to lower our maintenance cost in a long. It would be a little bit more expensive upfront with a T1 line, but if we keep the software over a period of time, we could have some savings. So I will revisit merging our technology with Lyons in 2014 or 2015 to see if they could bring it our costs down.
So one of the barriers with that is you need a T1 line running from the server in Lyons to wherever the jurisdiction is, whether it's McCook or Riverside.
Correct. It would be, Lyons is going to house it because of their new police facility. They're going to house the equipment there. That is one of the big problems right now. Plus, we can't convert it. What we'd have to do is hire a data clerk to manually load everything into the server in Lyons, which we have over 6,000 individual records. And that cost we would have to be bore by the Village of Riverside would be in addition. We wouldn't have to do that once our system is upgraded. We're hoping that Spillman, if the village so chooses, could migrate over there in the years to come, if that is a benefit to the Village of Riverside.
So this upgrade, this updated software gives you that ability to consider that option.
It does.
Anything further for the chief or any other discussion by the board? If not, thank you, Chief, and I would ask for a roll call on this resolution.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sal.
Aye.
Trustee Chavez.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Thank you, and that resolution is approved. Nothing further under Trustee Reynolds' item, so we shall move to River Parks and Recreation. Trustee Ballerini.
I have no report, Mr. President.
And lastly, Public Relations, Economic Development, Open Government. Trustee Shevitz.
No report tonight, President Walker.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening, Trustee Shevitz. And with that, that concludes our meeting, and I will ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
So we have a motion by Trustee, some reluctant motions here. I think we're all enjoying ourselves here. A motion by Trustee Sells and a second by Trustee Ballerini. If you would please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sal.
Aye.
Trustee Chavez. Trustee Valerie.
And thank you, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Mark.